Hi, I'm Liz Hiller with NACE, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Solving the Articulation Gap. We encourage you to actively participate in the chat and please post questions in the Q&A. It is my pleasure to introduce Amy Vaught, Assistant Director, Outside the Classroom Curriculum, University of Pittsburgh, Mallory Logue, Program Coordinator for the Outside of the Classroom Curriculum Program, University of Pittsburgh, and Mark Visco, CEO for Suitable. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Liz. Welcome, everybody. We're so happy you could join us on this lovely Friday. To start, before we dive into things here, let's see if people want to connect in the chat and maybe tell us where you're tuning in from and maybe even drop your LinkedIn link to get things going here. So I'll start us off. And look forward to connecting with everyone here today. As people are saying hi and coming in here, I want to go over a couple housekeeping items. First is if you have questions during the webinar, just feel free to use the Q&A function, and then if we have a good opportunity as we go to address the question, we will. If not, we'll circle back at the end during the formal Q&A portion. Also, I'm going to do, before we dive in here, just a quick plug. We have at Suitable a user conference coming up. It's called Pathways to Student Success. So I'm going to quickly just go over that. This is going to occur in Philadelphia this summer, July 24th to 26th. And it's 3 days, all student success related topics from student engagement, career readiness, competency development. And our keynote speaker is Dr. Ashley Finley from AAC&U. So I'm going to post this link in the chat as well for anyone who may be interested in checking it out later. And then let me get back to the slides here. And that brings us to today, solving the articulation gap. So students, they have great experiences outside the classroom while they're in college, but there is a challenge to helping them articulate those experiences in a meaningful way to employers when they're interviewing or on their resume. And so our partners at the University of Pittsburgh Student Affairs and Career Services Office, Amy Vaught and Mallory Logue, partnered with us on their Outside the Classroom Curriculum initiative open to all undergraduate students. And it helps the students build key skills and competencies outside the classroom, and even taking it a step further, helping them articulate those skills and competencies so they can achieve career success upon graduation. So as Liz mentioned, I'm Mark Visco, co-founder and CEO at Suitable, and I'll hand it off to Amy and Mallory to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Mark. My name is Amy Vaught. I am the Assistant Director of the Outside the Classroom Curriculum, or more fondly called the OCC, here at Pitt. I have been in this role for 8 or 9 years. I began in 2015, and before that, I worked at the university since 2011. So more years than I realize have gone by, but obviously I love it. Happy to be here today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mallory Logue. Amy's been there for 8 years. I've been at the OCC program coordinator position for 8 months. But we are a tiny team of 2, and I'm really excited to be here today and talk a little bit more about the OCC, which I also love very dearly.
And real quick too, before we full on get started here, I forgot to ask anyone in the audience, if you would like a copy of the slides, please type Y into the chat and we will make sure that you get a copy of the slides afterwards. So if you want a copy of the slides, just type Y into the chat, and we'll make sure that we follow up with you afterwards to get the copy of the slides. So, all right, let's get to it. Amy.
Okay, so we'll get started with what you see on your screen, a little background on Pitt. I wanted to give some recent data as well. As of fall 2023, across all of our campuses, there were 33,771 total students. Of those students, 24,503 were undergraduate. And as of today, as I'm looking at our suitable dashboard and the number of students, undergraduate at our Oakland campus, where we're located, is 19,658. So just a little under 20,000. We are a public research university, and some of the other facts you see here. Mallory is going to get us started now on an introduction to the outside the classroom curriculum and the OCC at Pitt, where it started and where we are today.
Yeah, Mark provided a pretty good overview, so I won't try to repeat a lot of what he said, but at its core, the OCC is more than just a collection of programs and events. It's really a dynamic platform designed to help students' growth and development in many ways. And I believe the program started, Amy, in like early or mid, I don't know, what year did it start?
2007, 2008.
2007, 2008. So it's been at the university for a while, gone through some transformations, and obviously now we work with Suitable. But this program really serves as a catch-all for all undergraduate students at Pitt and ultimately offers a diverse array of experiences aimed at nurturing students' personal and professional development, preparing them for life beyond graduation at Pitt. And we'll get into a little bit more specific details about the program in a bit. But Amy can talk a little bit more in detail about moving to the actual Suitable platform.
Don't worry about the date or the year when the program actually started. It's sort of disputed. We say 2000, 2008. The OCC was originally a top-down initiative, which is really the only way, in my experience, that initiatives move quickly at universities. So it was around that time in 2007, 2008 that a committee was formed around creating a co-curricular experience. And then really at that time, there were no functional technologies or softwares that supported exactly what we were doing. And in that time, in the early 2000s, I think it was a newer trend starting with the co-curricular experience and especially tracking that. So what Pitt was using at the time for residence life, for our student organizations, was a platform called Campus Labs, and today known as Engage. So they actually, because we were already using them at the university, they built something for us in the OCC that was functional. But when I came on in 2015, I thought there were some components missing that our students were looking for to participate. One in particular, it used to be when a student would show up to an event or program activity that counted for the OCC. And let me just say, as I'm explaining, maybe easier to think of the OCC as a Boy Scouts or a Girl Scouts, but for college. It's identifying activities, events, programs around campus, attaching it to one of our goal areas, and letting the student know that by participating, they're developing in a specific competency, like, for example, career preparation. So before moving to Suitable, in this other platform that we used, a student would come to the event, and I remember very specifically standing there with a card swiper, students swiping, and half of them saying to me, "Oh, well, I don't know what I'm swiping for, but sure, I'll swipe." And I thought, wow, that's sort of passive engagement, if engagement at all. They're not sure what they're swiping for, but they'll do it. So part of the reason to move into Suitable was their mobile app and the mobile app capabilities. So students had to intentionally go into the Suitable app on their phone, open it up and scan. So they were knowingly interacting with the OCC instead of swiping their Pitt ID. And then later I would have to come back to the office and use a very old software to upload those manually, the names, and then upload them again to the software we were using. So it's really come a long way. Of course, the Pitt connection. So alumni as founders of Suitable. The mobile app has made a huge difference. I believe it is about 90% of our student users that use the mobile app the whole way from start to finish, even though we do have the desktop site as well. And also Suitable does support multiple level requirements and tracking. And I can get more into the minutia of the levels and how we track students' progress, where they can get started and things like that a little later in the program. But just to be clear, so we moved to Suitable. Every student has to be an undergraduate at Pitt. Our program serves undergraduates. Our specific dashboard serves undergraduates. And they must be registered for courses, actively registered, and then they can access the OCC, their profile, and Suitable, just like they would access Canvas for their courses. So it's the same way, single sign-on, they access the platform. So connection and adoption across campus. I mentioned earlier that originally the OCC was a top-down initiative from our Dean of Students at the time, who foresaw the trend for co-curricular engagement, different from extracurricular. So adding that meaning to what students were doing outside of the classroom. So the value proposition of the OCC, which is to help students develop necessary competencies or soft skills, whatever you want to call them, in addition to their degree and their coursework, has become increasingly important to employers, which makes it increasingly important to the different schools and the areas that we have here at Pitt. We also have learning outcomes that have to do with co-curricular learning, and especially the return on engagement for students. But even more importantly, in recent years, the definition of student success and how each school defines that, really how each unit defines that, has come into play with students feeling first a sense of belonging, a sense of welcoming, and a sense that where they have chosen to go for their higher education is their home, is a place for them. So we work with a lot of areas. We are, like Mallory said, a tiny team of 2, but mighty. But we work with a lot of departments, areas on campus that you see on our little visual here, including but not limited to fraternity and sorority life, our community engagement office, or Pitt Serves, research opportunities, our new student programs. That's a huge partner with Welcome Week, and we'll talk a little more about that. Residence halls, and we call them resident assistants here. And those folks are really our unofficial ambassadors because they are in front of so many of our students all the time. We have our own OCC ambassadors, the Career Center here at Pitt, which has been a major partner because of the professional development aspect, and then our student groups and organizations.
So talking a little bit more in depth about the OCC, it was sort of born from a study done that showed that students spend 80% of their time outside of the classroom. So we really asked ourselves, how can we make the most of our students' time here at Pitt? Well, here's the OCC, which fosters a sense of belonging, as Amy said, and community among our Pitt students. And it's a space where students' voices are celebrated. They make meaningful connections by attending events or writing reflections. And a lot of their pivotal experiences in college occur. They're all documented through the OCC. So like I said, by attending events and scanning QR codes to writing those meaningful reflections that we have as a part of our OCC curriculum, we want our students to feel that by the time they graduate, they have a collection of experiences to talk about in their professional and personal lives as well. And aside from having these experiences upon completion of the OCC, we also have students are inducted into the OCC Honor Society. They get the highly coveted green quarter zip that you saw on the first slide with our lovely students. They love it. When they graduate, they get an honors cord, a green cord when they graduate, and they can also apply for our Advantage grant that we offer, which is a stipend of $3,000 to be used for an unpaid internship, could be research funding they're looking for, or any type of unpaid experiential learning opportunity. So it's a really exciting initiative that we have a part of completion of the OCC program.
And Mallory, maybe there was a question that came in, and this might be a good opportunity to address it, but for each of the different goal areas and competencies, what are there requirements for completion of each goal area?
Yeah, so if you go to the next slide, I'm actually going to talk about that. So yeah, we do have our 9 goal areas, and what does it look like to complete the OCC? These goal areas and competencies were originally derived from the NACE competencies, so it's very fitting that we're here today. And these goal areas are Pitt Pride, civic and social engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, leadership development, appreciation of the arts, career preparation, well-being, communication, and global and cultural engagement, which ironically align with a lot of the university departments that we have here at Pitt. So with these 9 goal areas, students have to earn at least 150 points in each of those goal areas. And as I mentioned before, they can earn points by attending events and scanning QR codes that align with one goal area, or by participating in self-reflections, such as talk about a leadership event that you went to, which would be part of the leadership goal area, or talk about what it meant to you to live in a residence hall, which would align with the Pitt Pride goal area. All of these things that our students are kind of doing daily that in the end help them make the most of their time here. And as Amy kind of mentioned, there's different activities that are worth more points, less points. And then there is that aspect of levels as well. But Amy could probably explain that a little bit better than I could.
No, not at all. I was just going to jump in and say that, because I don't think we mentioned this, the OCC program is completely optional. It's not, our dashboard is not required for any student. However, if you're choosing to complete the program, like Mallory just explained very well, you do have to earn at least 150 points across all of these areas. That is tracked through Suitable. And then we have a Qualtrics integration where students submit their final application to the OCC Honor Society. And that's also where we capture some metrics from our students about participating. So it is optional, it is self-paced, and students are completing the OCC in 2 different ways, attending in-person events and scanning QR codes, or logging in either on the app or the desktop site and writing a reflection about an experience, or uploading a document like a resume or a proposal or something like that. And like Mallory also touched on, there are different points assigned to activities depending on the engagement level. So for instance, we might have, I just added an event today. It's called Festival of the Egg that they have every year in February. It's through our nationality rooms here at the University of Pittsburgh. And that is a festival during the day. Students can stop in, enjoy, learn some different facts. So we assign that a level 1. That's 10 points. It is sort of a passive engagement. You can go, you observe, you might learn some, make some context, but it's a low ask at attending an event. So we provide a QR code that's displayed. Those students that attend, they'll get 10 points in our global and cultural engagement area. Versus, say, maybe an internship abroad that a student secures, and they have a summer unpaid internship. It's abroad. It is maybe through one of the schools here at Pitt that they secured the internship. That might be a level 3 or 4 in career preparation, and we might require them to write a reflection or upload their letter of acceptance or something like that. So the means for validation can change, the points can change depending on the experience. And a fun fact too, with our competency areas here, so these are pretty close to what the originals were back in 2007, 2008. We'll touch on that. But I think it really speaks to the longevity of the areas. When the NACE competencies came out in, I believe that was 2016. I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone in the chat. But when those original competencies came out, we had our OCC ones formed, and it was nice, a sort of sense of validation that they were similar. And so a lot of And so my, and this, we'll get into this with the key takeaways, but I always say that the NACE competencies or any other professional career readiness competencies are a great guideline, but make sure if you want to implement something like this at your school, I always recommend branding it to your school and your students. So using those competencies as a jumping off point. And if that is exactly what works for you, that's great. But you'll see here with our goal areas, the branding, we have the Pitt Pride goal area. You really want to make it branded and tailored to your school and your student population. So those possibilities are endless, but we'll get into that more later.
And I'll just agree strongly with Amy that is certainly what we see when our school partners personalize the design and the look and feel and the branding. It certainly goes a long way for students to show that there's someone behind this thing, the school cares, and it means something to them. So keep going here. Oop.
Yeah, we just also wanted to include some photos of and examples of OCC events that we consider for OCC credit. Like we have our I Love Pitt Day event that would count for Pitt Pride, the Pitt Arts Festival, which would be appreciation of the arts, speed friending, and a lot of our Welcome Week events are a part of the OCC. So it's a lot of events that we count for OCC credit, and these can be submitted from students to staff members at the university. And we kind of go through and will approve those. We have 2 student workers that we work closely with, along with Amy and I, kind of going through the programming aspect of making sure they're all in the suitable platform. It's also important to note that through the OCC, we offer mini grants for student organizations to apply for. So their event must fall under one of the OCC goal areas, and they must offer OCC credit. And then we provide additional funding for up to $250 towards their event. And we usually see about 30 plus events in a school year, which really increases overall knowledge of the OCC.
Okay, so I'm going to briefly go over something that's a little newer here at the University of Pittsburgh. While you're all still probably trying to wrap your head around all the details of the OCC, I'm just going to throw something else out there too. So it's called our transcript distinction. And this was a pretty huge deal here at Pitt because there's never been anything on the printed academic transcript that has specifically displayed co-curricular achievement. So the first distinction to come out a few years ago was our global distinction. And since then, we've added a few more. So you'll see the offerings that are included. We have a civic learning distinction, global, like I mentioned, honors distinction out of the honors college, sustainability distinction, and a learning sciences distinction. Now, the reason we're including this in our OCC presentation is one of the components of these distinctions is an outside the classroom experience, where you see there on the bottom right the visual of what all goes into a distinction. It is a little bit of a higher level than the OCC because we're adding in academic coursework. There are defined courses at the university that count toward each of these distinctions. You add that with the outside the classroom experiences that many times we capture in Suitable and through the OCC, and we can share that data with our partners. And then a capstone activity, or what we call a high impact activity. So that could be whatever the distinction owners want that to be. It could be an internship, it could be a service learning project, it could be some other capstone, but it's a high impact experience that goes along with the other two. And then what those three add up to are the interdisciplinary distinction. So we included that there as another way to, or as a way to marry sort of the academic with the outside the classroom curriculum, tying it all together in a capstone. And then you have that distinction, which now will appear and be printed on a student's transcript. So we wanted to include that here as well. And then I think I saw a question. I'm trying to sort of monitor in between slides so I can slip in the answer, but it was, how do we approve everything that a student is submitting? And so, yes, that is Mallory and I, we approve those. We also have our fabulous team of student workers in our office who we have trained, and they go through and look at reflections. And one of the aspects that I really like, we can go through and we can approve students, and then they're notified in their email that it's been approved, but we can also approve with feedback. So we can say, yes, you're approved, but also say, hey, really cool that you were able to check out this webinar, or so glad you participated in that event over the weekend. Have you heard about these other events? So it's coming directly from us. So we are reading the approvals. I don't get to do it as much anymore as I used to, but sometimes I will log in and read the approvals because I love to see what our students are experiencing, how they're having a great experience, and how they're maximizing their Pitt experience, which is really a core tenet of the OCC.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of what Amy said. It's really fun to read their reflections, especially when they're like really heartfelt, and I don't know, it just makes you feel really good. But we also wanted to talk about the OCC social media. So since I started this role, I've put a lot of effort into our marketing efforts. And aside from a complete overhaul of our physical marketing materials, one key initiative that I've worked on is enhancing our social media presence, specifically on Instagram. Since starting this initiative, we have successfully elevated the OCC's brand recognition across the university by working closely with other university departments, student organizations, and just the overall campus community. Our Instagram content is carefully curated to highlight OCC credited events, showcase the contributions of our student ambassadors, and spotlight recipients of our mini grants, and so much more. So by strategically focusing on these aspects, we have successfully captured the attention and engagement of our students, resulting in a notable increase in OCC completion. Over the past semester alone, our social media presence has experienced a huge growth, which our follower count started around like 430 in August, and then we've grown to like over 1,000 within the last few months. So it really shows, and in comparison to our completion rates, it also shows that students are engaging. They want to find out more about what's going on, and this is a great platform to do it for our students.
I can't emphasize enough that if you're lucky enough to have a staff person, like I have Mallory, to be behind the scenes of the Instagram, what a huge game changer that is. To have content in front of the students daily, to be up to date with events that are for OCC credit, because the truth is that OCC may not have the same intrinsic value to a student that an internship or a co-op has. But students came to Pitt for a reason. They want to be here, they want to engage, and they want to participate. So we have to get the OCC in front of them consistently as a reminder, because I mean, they're also here to go to class, right? I mean, I believe so. There's some outside of the classroom things, but there are some classes here as well. So to talk a little bit about the professional development side and go back to the NACE competencies, we use something called the Career Ready Guide. We began using that, I want to say in 2018 or so. I'll just say pre-pandemic. That's how I measure time. So pre-pandemic, we contracted with a company called Career Spots. And the Career Ready Guide is based on the NACE, the 8 NACE career readiness competencies. And it is an asynchronous learning tool. It takes about 3 to 4 hours for a student to complete it, so it doesn't have to be done all in one sitting. But it's a comprehensive overview of all of the career readiness competencies from NACE, chapter by chapter, that a student goes through and completes. There are quizzes, you know, like your typical standard training or modules that you would go through. And then at the end, there's a screen that says, congratulations, you've completed. Students take a screenshot of that, upload it into Suitable, and then I believe it's 50 or 75 points for completing this Career Ready Guide, because they've done this deep dive into the competencies. And going back to the title of our webinar and the articulation gap, I'm a firm believer in our students here at Pitt do not have a skills gap. They have the skills, they have the capabilities. However, what I found over the years is it's difficult for them to articulate them. So I want students to feel confident in the fact that they have the experience without maybe having, you know, a real paid position or job or anything. You know, I can't tell you how many times we've had a student come in, maybe they're having their resume review and they say, well, I don't have any real world experience. I haven't had a job, you know, I'm just in school. Well, you're doing all of these things that are very impactful as part of your co-curricular engagement. Along with the Career Ready Guide, what that is doing is telling the student, helping the student to realize and make the connection. Oh, okay, so I went to this event and this was categorized as leadership development. Oh, that's interesting. So I could talk about that. So it's sort of giving them the steps, giving them the tools to equip them with that knowledge that you do have the experience, you do have the expertise, and here are some helpful ways to articulate that. So the Career Ready Guide is one tool that we use to help students with that. So some things that have worked well, and don't be discouraged if you don't have a, you know, maybe you are beginning a program like this, you don't have anything like this, you would like to have something like this. There are a lot of things that didn't go well to get us to where we are today, but some things that have worked well. I always encourage schools and universities to have a strong launch during any welcome week that you have. Now, don't get me wrong. I know students are inundated with information over Welcome Week, but they take bits and pieces away and they remember. And even if you speak with them later and they say, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that, that's all you need. The brand recognition is very important. We say the OCC, like I said, is like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, but for college, students understand that right away, because what we're also seeing here at Pitt is when students are coming in, they had a similar co-curricular tracking program or curriculum in their high schools. You know, so it's starting at a lower level before they're coming into higher education. So they're more and more familiar with the terminology and what we're asking them to do. We do a very strong launch during our fall welcome week, which is larger than the spring welcome week, but we do both. And we right away identify to students, we're a part of the welcome week schedule with our goal area icons that you saw earlier on, and identifying which activities, programs throughout Welcome Week count for OCC just to get them in the routine and have them practice scanning QR codes, downloading the app, things like that. So that's where we work very closely with our new student programs office. Brand recognition, I mentioned the increased social media presence, which Mallory has increased tenfold. And then, of course, the relationships with other departments is very important, because what I say all the time is we don't program here at the OCC. I am not an event planner. I am not a programmer. I do not have that expertise. The folks that do that at campuses are phenomenal, and they don't need me there. I would not provide any help. But we count on the programming that's at Pitt to make up what our OCC is. And so this is another thing I say all the time, and again, it will come up in key takeaways. Look at what your university, your school, your college already does, because I guarantee you, you're already doing these efforts. You're already offering this rich programming outside of the classroom. That's what the OCC here at Pitt is built on. When you look at our competency areas, those are very intentional. We have appreciation of the arts because we have a Pitt Arts office. We have global and cultural engagement because we have a University Center for International Studies. We have our Pitt Pride goal area because we have our Pitt Program Council planning those social events. We have career preparation for the Career Center. You get the idea. I could go on, but we are not creating those things. We're essentially putting our OCC stamp on. So that's actually one of my favorite parts of my position, is being able to work with all of these different areas and bringing some centralization, a little bit. We're a very large, very decentralized university, but these core competencies, or these areas, are ever present in all of our schools and in academics and after you graduate, and they reoccur throughout life as we all change and grow and evolve. So those things have worked well.
And if you still don't believe us, we wanted to showcase some student feedback quotes that we've gotten from our completion students. But I won't read these verbatim, but a lot of what students talk about is that by completing the OCC, they've been introduced to new concepts and exposed to new topics and ways of thinking that are different from what they probably initially thought. They've also learned a lot about opportunities going on campus and resources that the University of Pittsburgh offers. They also talk about how they can relate academic lessons to outside of the classroom experiences, which is really important with that experiential learning aspect. Students feel that they are prepared for beyond graduation after completing the OCC, and these quotes are pretty evident of that. And we thought it would be fun if we showed some engagement pieces within the last school year. We did an OCC wrap on our social media, which kind of summarizes all of our engagement aspects. So as you can see here, this showcases the number of activities, to top goal areas, to how many QR codes were scanned. We're still seeing an increase. This is from November, so the numbers have gone up even more. Our students really loved seeing this, especially our top organizations, and the feedback has shown that students really want to be involved just from posting this, and I'm excited to see it grow even more. So feel free to take a look at those statistics. It was really exciting for us to see them too.
Yeah, it's a lot of event attendance and scans there, and completers. It's proud to be a part of it. I'm going to quickly walk through a few of the core features that Amy and Mallory are using. So first is the different ways that we track experiences. There's 4 different ways available. The first is event check-in through the mobile app, which you've heard enough about. what's great about this is you don't have to deal with the swipers and scanners anymore. It's all right there on the student's phone, and they actively engage and know what they're checking into. For experiences that aren't necessarily event driven, and more of a reflection, Amy and Mallory can use the self-guide reflection capability, and they simply just write a prompt and they make it as onerous or as easy as they want. The students see that prompt and respond accordingly right there. And then it can be, they have the option to make it reviewed. So that way Amy and Mallory can take a look at it, offer feedback if need be. But there are cases where reflections don't quite totally show completion of the experience, and sometimes they need maybe an artifact or some kind of e-portfolio submission to as evidence of completion. So we do have a fully integrated e-portfolio for every student, and this accepts all standard types of media. So you could ask students to submit pictures of them when they were studying abroad, or videos, or PowerPoints from that project they did, or Word docs, Excel spreadsheets, you name it. Amy and Mallory can ask for that as evidence into their e-portfolio. And then through our Qualtrics integration, there's surveys, quizzes, assessments that can be given to students directly through the app. I'd say the biggest one that we have in the OCC is that completion application that students can go in and out right there on their phone to get that quarter zip. Another important piece about Suitable is that it's real time. So that way, as students are completing the different goal areas or working on those distinctions, they know at any moment where they stand from 0 to 100% completion. And as soon as they check into that event or they submit that e-portfolio item, they're going to see their progress move forward. And right there in the mobile app, it shows them what they've done and what's left to complete, when it's happening, what they have to do, and how to do it. So that's another piece to this, is just taking burden off Amy and Mallory having to update students on their progress and making it really easy for them to see in the app. And then as those reflections or e-portfolios submissions are rolling in, there is that approval queue where they can go in and see that reflection that was written, or see what that picture was that was submitted, and then either, you know, send it back and say, this is just a picture of the ceiling, please resubmit, or they could approve and say, hey, that was a great reflection. Thank you for submitting. Glad to see you're at that leadership workshop. So there's the ability to, give kudos to students, not just, negative feedback. And then finally, one of the main reasons why I started the company, really to give students that asset when they graduate, something that documents their co-curricular experience and helps them articulate the value of that experience. So every single student on Suitable has a co-curricular transcript with that integrated e-portfolio. And what's nice is it's automatically being built out for them as they participate. So some of the other systems that I had to use before Suitable, students had to, I call it the brain dump, go in and upload their reflections or upload all the portfolio items they've accumulated every semester, which is cumbersome, and most students won't do that. So in Suitable, as students check in, as students write those reflections, and as students submit their e-portfolio items, it's being recorded right here on their co-curricular transcript for them. So at any moment, they can go in and see their history. The last thing I'll mention is our push notification capability. So right there from the admin dashboard, Amy and Mallory have the ability to go in and send out custom push notifications right to students' phones. This could be reminders about upcoming events, maybe a change in location. It could be to a particular student following up about an activity that they recommended them. It could be to every student in the system. There's really a pretty robust segmenting feature in there, and even allows them to schedule these notifications, for instance, going out every Monday morning or something. So this is another way to get to students that doesn't rely on email and just goes right to their phone. So with that, I will hand it back over.
Okay, thank you. I took this opportunity to look up some of our numbers here because I was seeing some questions in the chat. So I can talk about our long-term vision, of course. But I saw something about incentives to complete the OCC. So the transcript distinction is something different. If you complete the OCC, you won't automatically get that distinction. But some of the incentives to complete the OCC, in addition, of course, to just fully experiencing Pitt and being introduced to the resources and activities, that doesn't sell all students, right? So the importance of having something tangible at the end, I can't emphasize enough. Mallory mentioned briefly earlier our quarter zip sweatshirts. When the students complete the OCC, they're eligible to apply for the OCC Honor Society. That's where the application comes in, which is in Suitable, integrated with Qualtrics. So we capture their completion information, and we also capture some metrics, which I'll talk about in a second. So the quarter zip is one. The green cord to wear at graduation, that insignia for graduation, very important to our students, especially for those students that are maybe not a part of another honor society, maybe don't have honors within their school. That green cord is very important. I don't know about other schools, but students every year are getting more and more weighed down by lots of colors of cords. So I think like eventually it's just going to be all cords. I don't know. That's a very big thing here in Pittsburgh. So the green cord of distinction. Another really great incentive, and Mallory touched on this as well, the OCC Advantage Grant. So students that complete the OCC, we actually have our applications open now. They can get a stipend of $3,000 over the summer for participating in some type of experiential learning opportunity that's unpaid and directly related to their career aspirations. So I wanted to address some of the incentives, go over those again, and then talk about our student completion and some of the numbers of students that participate, engage in the program, and how many of them complete. So we started our tracking back in academic year 2011-2012. That was the inaugural year of tracking, and we had 208 students complete. It steadily rose from there until academic year 2018-2019, where we hit a peak of 526 students for that academic year that completed the OCC. Then, as we all know, the pandemic was upon us, so our numbers started to gradually decrease in the coming years back down to the 200s and just under. And now we're beginning to increase those again and come up. But I like to stay around 400 to 500 students per year that are persisting, that are completing this. And then we look at their responses for surveys about their experience in the OCC, rather than comparing those 500 to 600 to the overall 19,000. It's valuable to me to look at those students, why they are completing, and then changing our our outreach, not changing, but increasing our outreach. Because the thing is, to be honest, the OCC may not be for every student. Every student may not need the OCC, but for those students that need it, it's incredibly valuable. And we've seen in a lot of our other data outcomes that it helps students to persist in college. We have a high 4- and 6-year graduation rate for those that complete the OCC, and that sense of belonging and purpose, which is really important for our students, especially now. Just to give a quick glance at engagement, in the last month, We had 2,752 students engage in some way with the OCC. So that could have been scanning a QR code, submitting a reflection, checking in to an activity, whatever it was. So almost 3,000 students. In the last 6 months, we had 5,897 students engage with the OCC or suitable in some way. And so, like I mentioned, of course, our long-term vision, we want to increase total student completion numbers post-pandemic. I'm very confident we'll get them there. We are implementing some new metrics for measuring student success. And specifically this year, I wanted to measure how students would assess themselves in our different competency areas before completing the OCC and after. So now they are comparing, their knowledge of certain areas like career preparation, diversity, equity, inclusion, leadership development, communication skills before completing the OCC and after. And our data so far has been very positive, where students have shown an increased knowledge in those areas after completing the OCC. And then again, I talk about strategically marketing the OCC as we continue to redefine what student success looks like on our campus, as we continue to admit students from diverse backgrounds, both economically, racially. We have, like, our student class is looking more diverse each year. And so marketing the OCC, tailoring the OCC to make this a personalized experience for those students and an accessible and scalable experience for those students as well. And so a few key takeaways that I mentioned earlier, just because they have been so important and pronounced for us over their years. Understanding your students and their unique needs. You are all the ones that do that. You're on the ground, you're doing the work, you're seeing the students, you're meeting with the students. You understand what is important to them, what their unique needs are, and what your specific outcomes are. So a lot of the answers lie within the unique needs of your students and your campus. Also leveraging your institution's current programming. So I'll use the phrase, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. What you're already doing at your universities is powerful, is impactful. This is a way to organize it and provide a pathway for those students that need it, and then have that sense of accomplishment at the end. Involving others in the conversation, of course, because we are not the end-all experts on co-curricular education or soft skills. And so others at the university, absolutely. Your students, staff, faculty, and those outside the university, employer partners, alumni, involve them in the conversation. What are they looking for? What makes a student successful? There are so many different definitions, so many ways to do that. So hearing others, I'm always a big proponent too. If I can understand a piece of someone else's job, it helps me to do mine better. So how can we prepare these students for whatever their next step, their next chosen step is? And then remaining flexible and scalable. I mean, that's probably just good advice in life too, I guess. But, just remaining flexible, because things change. Curriculums change, what we're focusing on, societal issues change, perspectives change. It's so we have to remain fluid, remain flexible. Now, what's been nice is our competency areas have remained stable and relevant throughout these past 10 plus years. They still apply across all disciplines, which makes it very easy to be interdisciplinary, but scalable, which is nice too. This could be integrated into one school at a university or university wide. And so I'll stop. That's a lot of information. And then I wanted to give Mallory an opportunity for any key takeaways that she's had in her last year working as the coordinator.
Thanks, Amy. In this role, I've noticed that students really want to be involved on campus, but they also want to see the value and purpose as to why they're getting involved. And I think especially with this new demographic of students, they want simplicity and accessible information and accessible events. And one of Amy and I's key phrases this year has been back to basics to ensure that we're reaching this for our students. So with all of that, I'm excited to see as we continue throughout this school year and next school year of how we will do this for our students here at Pitt.
Awesome, thank you. And we did take some questions along the way, but with the remaining time, maybe we can get into the Q&A here. And Amy, Mallory, if you've already answered this, then please just say so. But I'll just start at the top here. The question is, what is the average amount of time / semesters that it takes student to complete the OCC?
Well, it varies, but I would say if the student was very diligent in going through the OCC and being proactive and intentional about it, the average time would be by the end of their sophomore year. But we have students, we have really overachieving, over-involved students that, and this is not the norm, sometimes they complete by the end of their first year. We have other students that will leave it until they graduate, until their senior year, which is great. I mean, that's the nice thing about it being self-paced. There are no prerequisites, so students can go in whatever order they would like. There's different programming, throughout the year. So for example, this month during Black History Month, our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion has an uptick in events and offerings. So students are going to those to fulfill that goal area, even though that programming happens throughout the year. So it really just depends. It depends on the timing of the programming. I always suggest to students to take your time, because this is supposed to be an evolution and a growth process. And, it's not supposed to be an extra thing for students to do. It's about recognizing and naming those things they're already doing and connecting them to the competency.
Students also get really competitive too. We have like a leaderboard that students can see where they're at, and they really love to be in the top 10 for sure.
Okay, and then we'll try to get one or two more in here, but the next question is, how do you determine the point value of the reflections that students submit? And this may be more, or I mean, what the point value for the activities you enter.
So I think Amy touched on this earlier, but it all kind of depends. So a level 1 is 10 points, and that would be like going to an event and scanning a QR code, like go make stickers, that's 10 points. And then like a 20-point activity would be like an extra step. So there's an event where students are going to Washington, D.C. to shadow a legislator for a day. So that could probably be anywhere from 20 to maybe 50 points. We had a leadership summit this past weekend, and that was an all-day event. So students that attended that, since there was like a little bit more involved, that was worth 50 points. So it all kind of depends on what the students are doing. And then say, like, if there's an extra step students need to take, it'll probably be worth more points.
And kind of related about activities and completion, the next question is just, do you have a sense of the breakdown between like check-ins versus reflections? Like, which one do students use more to complete the OCC?
Yeah, I saw that question, and I don't know that I know the answer to that. That's an interesting one. I might have you, Mark, run a report for us and see. But I would say that that it's a pretty even mix of both. And I tell students all the time that because, it's obviously pretty easy to show up in an event or you're already there and scan a QR code. It's a little bit harder to do a reflection, but you can't complete the OCC just by scanning QR codes. However, you can complete it, little known fact, by going through and doing all reflections. So students do a little bit of both. So the QR codes are nice. The real meat of the program lies in the reflecting.
Great, thank you. And then about reviewing and approving, the same person review and approve reflections and submissions, and what type of feedback? We kind of already covered this, but maybe more for just clarification.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Amy. Do you want to?
No, go ahead.
So it's actually a combination of Amy, myself, and then, like we mentioned, we have 2 trained student workers that will go through and make sure students are meeting the criteria for, if they're doing those self-reflection pieces, that those are all being covered. And we do sometimes provide feedback. So if the prompt is write a reflection about a DEI event you went to, and they said, I went to this event, it was fun. We're looking for like a little bit more usually to talk about, what did they get out of the experience? What do they hope to, bring to the table or something like that. So it all just kind of depends. But like we said before, we really love reading those reflections when they're really in depth and really heartfelt.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to time. I will just quickly give the answer. Someone asked if they can share out those e-portfolios and transcripts, and the answer is yes, there is a shareable link. It's unique to them, just like your LinkedIn profile has a unique link, so they can use that to share. But that wraps it up. So sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but we appreciate everyone's time and attention and engagement today. Amy and Mallory, thank you so much for sharing your story and collaborating on this webinar with us. It's really great work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day, everybody.